Hey there, everybody. How are you doing? It's me, Chris Herman, here for another solo episode of On Deck. Today, we are episode 51. Yes, episode 51 of On Deck, happening right now as I talk to you into this camera. And today's topic is the news. Yes, the news. But before I bring you the news, as always, I'd like to have a quick mention to request all of you that are watching, listening, and enjoying this content, please take some time to like and subscribe to, or rather subscribe to and ring the bell at the Herman Agency's channels, the Herman Agency channel, the Herman Agency's YouTube channel. How about that? Wow, tongue twister. Couldn't get that one out today. The Herman Agency's YouTube channel. Please subscribe, ring the bell, like these videos, comment on them, please. Your feedback is very valuable to us, and want to make sure that you are up to speed on all the new content that's coming out of right here in the lovely Fort of Lauderdale, Florida, at the Herman Agency headquarters here. So let's get to the topic. Today's topic is the news. Now, I am not bringing this up to have a confrontational conversation about the news. That's not it. I don't wish to do that. But what I do hope to get across in this video is a request to all of you out there. So obviously the news is an interesting topic these days. And I say that because regardless if your political leanings are to the left or if your political leanings are to the right, I think that we would all agree that in this day and age, the news has become a large contributor to divisiveness in our country, and I think an overall state of irritation. And so I'm going to start with my own personal experience. I've always been a news guy. I love the news. I've always loved the news. I've always enjoyed staying on top of the news. And my mix of news over the years has always been a balance. It was always a combination of CNN and Fox and MSNBC and any of the other mainstream outlets. I always did my best to pay attention to all of it, knowing that, certain media outlets tend to have a particular bias. And so in wanting to stay well informed on what's going on in the world, I always prided myself on paying attention to as much as I can from the left and to the right. Now, I can say that over time, I feel that the polarization of our news outlets has grown pretty wide. I tend to lean a little bit more to the right, but I'm conservative on some issues. I'm liberal on other issues. So really, I want to always maintain a sense of open-mindedness about information. But what I have found, and I think many of you would agree, is that over the last 5 to 10 years, it's become very difficult to get news that actually feels like unbiased news. You always hear people talk about, back when Walter Cronkite was reading the news, it was unbiased and it was just straight down the middle. I was pretty young when that was the case, so I don't remember that specifically, but I think we would all agree that we've seen a big polarization in the news. And, you've got your CNN and MSNBCs on the left, you've got Fox on the right, kind of both staking out their ground and catering to a particular audience or a particular political ideology. And I can understand why the networks would have done that. I mean, from a business perspective, certainly it makes sense to recognize that you have a specific audience that has specific beliefs and you are tailoring your product to your audience. So from a business perspective, what these networks have done is no different than any other manufacturer of a product would do, which is we are going to create a product that is accepted, desired, and continually wanted by our audience. However, that's put us in this weird time right now where, it's either left or right. And it's very hard to get information that you would hope would be non-biased and true reporting. Now, What I'm not saying is that there aren't good reporters or journalists on either side at any of the mainstream media outlets, but what I really am hoping to get to is to establish two things. Number one, for myself, I can truly say, even though I love the news and I love politics and I love staying on top of it. In fact, there was a time when I even had my own hopes and aspirations for getting into politics. I can say that time has come and gone, thank God, because who would want to get into that mess? But that being said, I do have a love for politics and a love for world events and world news. But I do find that lately, in the last year or two, particularly, as we came out of the Trump era into Biden era, and with COVID overlapping all of this, watching the news, paying attention to the news or reading the news has almost become something that is like an addictive, negative experience. I mean, it really, it can bring out a lot of negative thought process. And I think it does that for a lot of people. So I do find for myself that if I back away from the news, the more I back away from the news, the more easy it is to walk around this earth and go, you know what, man, it's a beautiful planet. It's a beautiful day. I just met a nice person. I just had a really nice experience. Things are okay, right? But boy, you turn into mainstream media and everything's terrible. Everybody's fighting. Everybody's right. Everybody's wrong. It can be a real negative experience. And so over the last period of time, in order to avoid that, A, I've backed up, but B, I've found myself wanting to seek out other news sources that hopefully can provide some insight into what's really going on, that it's not as biased, right? And I feel that I've been able to get to a point where I do have some news sources that I want to share with you today that actually the investigative journalism is good. Some of it is from writers who are typically on the left, but they are non-biased in their approach. Some of it is by writers who are on the right, and they have been non-biased. And I really think it's worth everybody understanding that there are news sources out there that don't fall under the mainstream media category, and therefore are more likely to provide some information that you might actually feel like, wow, I feel like I'm actually getting the real story here, as opposed to a bunch of slanted and angled, biased, information. And so, for me, I think, I've shared this before, I'll share it again. I'm a huge Joe Rogan fan. In fact, the reason I do this podcast is because of him. I have found Joe Rogan's podcast to be a wealth of information on all topics. And I know it's so interesting because Joe's a liberal. I mean, he was gonna vote for Bernie Sanders. I mean, I think that tells you a lot about what his political leanings are. But it is just remarkable to me how much he gets actually slammed by the left, as whether they want to call him an anti-vaxxer or he's more on the right wing in terms of his ideology. I don't think that's the case at all. I think he's just for freedom and honesty and an open dialogue about all topics. But if you've ever really listened to Joe's episodes, I mean, he has guests of all kinds, from the left to the right. Some of it's comedians, some of it's his MMA guys. But what I gravitate towards there is that you have these really nice long-form conversations with people of all skill levels in all backgrounds, sharing really meaningful insights into different topics of the day. And so I find the Joe Rogan podcast to be a source of good information, or a source of ideas or people that might be worth following. And so as a result of listening to Joe Rogan, I have either come across other journalists or been reintroduced to journalists that, quite frankly, I have found to be very insightful. So, who are some of these people? Now, one of the recent episode on Joe Rogan had two guests, and the two guests, and I'm gonna mispronounce his name, and I apologize, but I believe it's Sagar Enjeti and his partner Crystal Ball. When I say partner, not romantic partner, but his news partner. So Sagar and Crystal have a show called Breaking Points. They have a channel on YouTube. Sagar is more of a conservative, and Crystal is definitely more of a liberal. And you'll find on their shows on Breaking Points, they are covering all topics of what's going on in the news from a equally balanced perspective, right to left, in a way that I appreciate. So, for example, why do I appreciate it? Well, you've got Crystal Ball, who's on the left, and she is very critical of many things about Joe Biden and the current, Democratic agenda. Just as Sagar will be very critical of things, in the previous Trump administration. So what you're getting on this news program called Breaking Points, you can find it on YouTube, is a very balanced approach from two young, up-and-coming news providers who are not saddled with any large network obligations. They're not saddled with any affiliations that doesn't allow them to communicate freely and honestly about what they feel is important in terms of what's going on in the world. It's very refreshing, and I suggest you check it out. An author, a writer that I've been reintroduced to is Matt Taibbi. Matt is definitely more of a liberal. I kind of fell off of Matt a little bit because he was extremely critical of Trump, and being that I lean a little bit more to the right, some of his criticisms I thought were extremely strong. But nevertheless, I've always, been interested in Matt's writing because he wrote for Rolling Stone for many years, and he's been very insightful in a lot of stuff. I will tell you, Matt's a guy on the left. If you follow the stuff that he's writing right now, I mean, he is straight up absolutely critical of a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world, whether it's stuff that's going on currently in the Biden administration, whether it's stuff that's going on with this perceived censorship that we're seeing from social media platforms. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on right now that are concerning for people that most of the mainstream media is not talking about as much. And so I think Matt Taibbi brings a very interesting perspective. Another left-leaning journalist who I have begun following and really appreciate his perspective is Glenn Greenwald. Now, I don't have his bio memorized, but I'm pretty sure Glenn Greenwald was a writer for the New York Times for a long period of time. Definitely a liberal guy. He lives down in, I want to say, Argentina or Brazil. And he has been very, very right up the middle in terms of his reporting. Now, he ends up on Fox News a lot because he tends to be supportive of some of the right-leaning, news agenda, if you will. And when I say he's just calling things out in the current administration that sort of fit within Fox News's, programming, philosophy, if you will. That doesn't mean that he's a right-wing guy. He's not. Glenn Greenwald is on the left. Matt Taibbi is on the left. Joe Rogan on the left. These are people who typically have voted Democrat or would continue to vote Democrat, but who are reporting on what's going on in the world from a true unbiased perspective. And I think that these are really good sources of information. Now, you can find some of these writers also on a website called Substack. Substack is a website that allows journalists to basically create an account and charge the reader directly. So, for example, I follow Matt Taibbi on Substack. I subscribe to him on Substack. I subscribe to Glenn Greenwald on Substack. It's not a lot of money, but essentially you're paying the journalist direct, and they are writing articles. And there's journalists of all sorts, so it's left to right. It's a full spectrum. But they're not affiliated with any large, journalistic organization or news organization, so they are free to write and report as they see the truth to be, which is refreshing. And I think if you were to jump in there, you'd find that there would be writers that appeal to your particular belief set, but that are writing in a way that does not follow the prescribed, methodology of mainstream media. And it's really, in these times right now, finding good sources of information is really great. If you move to the far right, you might look at Ben Shapiro. Now, a lot of people think Ben Shapiro is this like super rigid right-wing guy. He kind of is, but I will tell you, he is sharp as a tack. The guy is on top of what's going on in the world, and he's got a very, very sharp mind. And if you care to get a stronger Republican or right-wing perspective, that is a well-informed one, worth listening to get the balance. I'm not suggesting, that I'm not here to pitch any ideology. It doesn't matter. I told you, I tend to be a little bit more to the right, but there's many issues that I am liberal about, and there's many issues that I'm conservative about, and I like to take those as they come. And in terms of my own beliefs, I am 100% open to and enjoy the opportunity to sit and discuss any topic with anybody, because just because I have my own opinions right now doesn't mean that I wouldn't change them based on gathering new information. And so I find that to be a very fulfilling part of life, right? You grow, you learn, you develop your opinions, your thoughts, your feelings about things based on your experiences and based on the knowledge that you have. And it's exciting to continue to grow and be exposed to new information that helps develop and then sometimes change how you view the world or how you view particular topics. It's hard to do that if you are plugged directly into mainstream media, whether you're on the left or on the right. You're basically getting fed information that you already know and you already believe, and it tends to solidify your position on these issues. And I believe they refer that as confirmation bias, where you just continually expose yourself to news and information that supports your beliefs. I just don't see any growth there. I don't see growth for people there in just constantly feeding yourself stuff that is 100% in line with what you already think or believe. That's why I'm sharing some of this information with you, because I love having these conversations. This podcast is not going to become a political podcast. It's just, there's enough of that going on right now, and I just don't see the benefit of going there. But that being said, I do want to share information with all of you that could be beneficial to you. If you're looking for new sources of information, if you're looking for good investigative journalism that is looking through the events of the world with the most non-biased eye that you could possibly find, it's out there. It's harder to find. Actually, it's not hard to find. It's super easy to find, but they're just not, it's not something that you're going to run into every day if you don't know about it. So again, I'm a big Joe Rogan podcast fan. I love it. So much great information there of all types of sorts. Even if you like UFOs, there's so many great, conversations about extraterrestrials and UFOs. There's a lot of great stuff on comedians and comedy. It's great. If you're looking for good written journalism, check out Substack. Subscribe to any number of the journalists that are on there direct and read their articles. I think you'll find that very valuable. And if you want a quick kind of like, news show to watch, check out Breaking Points on YouTube. It's good stuff. So I hope that didn't, I'm always trying to say real neutral on this kind of stuff, because I just don't see the point in getting to the left or to the right. We all have our ideas. We all have our opinions. We all have our beliefs, but we all, I hope, desire to live in a world where our beliefs, whether they may be different, are respected, and that we can have open conversations about this stuff. But it's much easier to have intelligent conversations about topics when we're all better informed. And so I would say, try, if you can, detach from mainstream media. You're not getting news there. You're getting sold an ideology. You're getting sold to some degree propaganda, right? That suits your beliefs, but that's not helping us come together as people to communicate through the many challenging issues that we face in this country, in this world. There's always going to be issues, always going to be challenges, but the more informed we are, it just gives us a better opportunity to have meaningful conversations. So, again, today's topic, episode 51 here on deck, is the news. And if any of you guys have any questions or want more information about some of these journalists I've represented, and again, I'm just digging into this to myself, so please don't take like this as like, oh, Chris, He only believes in this, or these are the only writers. No, I'm still digging into this too. I'm just sharing with you what I've come across at this point in time, and there'll be more down the road. So, as always, I hope you're well. I thank you for taking some time to listen, and if you have any more questions, just reach out in the comments, DM me, and I'd be happy to share any of the information that I'm getting on the news. Thanks, everybody. See ya.